Hi, and welcome to section 4 of our third unit here in social studies for the Gold Rush. This section is all about the transition of our fine city of San Francisco. So we're going to take a look at how San Francisco kind of began and how it transitioned very quickly because of the Gold Rush. Here are the notes. Please go ahead and copy these down. Pause the video, write them down. Just like before, if you have a question, concern, inquiry, etc., please write those in your notes and bring them to the class because we will be discussing these notes, making sure everyone got them all correct, got them all filled out, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this lecture. So go ahead and pause the video and continue on after you're finished copying these in your comp notes. Yerba Buena. Ah, yes, Yerba Buena. The first people who lived in San Francisco were the Ohlone peoples, or the Native American tribes here, and we all know that because we learned that last year in third grade um, with Miss Tretter, or whoever your third grade teacher was. And I believe you guys went to the Ohlone village and did all that fun stuff. So you kind of have an understanding of what was going on locally before Europeans started coming over here. But eventually there were Europeans who made it out west, as we learned earlier in the year. And the first European settlers in San Francisco was Juan Bautista de Anza, and he was one of the missionary Spaniards who built the San Francisco Mission in 1776 alongside other missions, just like we just recently went to the San Juan Bautista Mission, named after him. But he also helped found this one in San Francisco. But the amount of people he brought here was about somewhere around 200-ish. There weren't many people that lived here, but again, it wasn't they weren't necessarily too concentrated in one area. Compared to what we have now, and they were kind of spread out between here and San Juan Bautista. But basically, these kind of Spanish cattle ranchers started to populate California, and we talked about that last unit about why that was important. But they eventually ended up settling in a place in San Francisco, which we'll get to in a second, and they called it Yerba Buena, and they called it Yerba Buena because there was this plant or herb that was local to this region that they really liked, and so they named it Good Herb or Yerba Buena. That location where they stayed at in San Francisco today is Portsmouth Square, and that's where Yerba Buena kind of took shape. Although it really wasn't, what it is today. Obviously, it was just, like a village, a very, very small village back in these times. Um, so about 1846, like I said, there's about 250 people living there, and um, within 10 years, we get over 50,000. So think about it: 250 people living in this little small port village to 50,000, and that's a lot of people back then. It's a lot of people now, and that name of the city would also be changed from Yerba Buena to San Francisco. So pretty crazy. But I want you to take a look. You saw this picture at the very start of the lecture. This is a picture of Yerba Buena in 1846. As you can see, there's a few, a couple houses. Maybe there's a little general store. Um, maybe there's a little town hall thing going on over there. But realistically, it's just, it's a small congregation of people in a little community and nothing else going on. But of course, the Golden Gate and the bay is such a nice port. It's the best port on the Pacific. It was thought to be for a long time, even by early travelers. And so, you see here there were a lot of ships kind of going here and coming back. Now we see San Francisco in the winter of 1848. Now we know in the winter of 1848, gold has already been found. And people were successful in 1848. You know, those 5,000 miners who weren't in San Francisco, they were, near in the Sierra foothills and Coloma and near Sacramento. They weren't in San Francisco, but they'd come here because this was like the town. This is where they'd come to do their commerce, their trading. And you can see there's, you know, some more buildings. It looks a little more organized, just by a rough estimate. It looks maybe the population doubled from 400, 500 to 1,000 ish. But then word spreads, and San Francisco starts booming. And you see here a lot of tents, kind of closer to the picture. You see a lot of tents, and then just houses starting to just spring up. And the reason there were tents is because people they got here, there was nothing here, so they had to just erect some sort of shelter. And a lot of them were just living in tents while they were building building the city. So you can see much more people, and this population just continues to rise drastically. And by 1850, this place is going crazy. It's going bonkers. There's houses starting to spring up everywhere. San Francisco is now well known throughout the world, and there's tons of ships in the port. Everyone's coming here. Everyone's just dropping off people, going back down to Panama, picking more people up, coming back up. Where some people just didn't. They just left the ship entirely itself and head out to the gold fields. And we have 1851. So as you can see, in just that short amount of time, 3 years, it went from pretty much nothing to, wow, that looks like a pretty sophisticated city. So you can see just how fast this area was constructed. It was a boom town. That's why they say boom town, because it was like boom. All of a sudden, there's just thousands of houses, thousands of people from all around the world living in this one spot, where 2 or 3 years before this, no one was there. And here you can see Portsmouth Square, where the original Yerba Buena was, where the first congregation. But you're starting to look at the buildings here, and these almost look similar to the buildings that we have today in San Francisco. There are some of these kind of like really close together buildings, and you kind of get this Wild West kind of feel to it. But still, you see the the houses on the hillside, and you're like, wow, this is starting to come together. You can start to imagine what it's starting to look like. Well, the next year, this is the city map, or the city planning of the map. And you can see it looks very organized. It's very structured. All the houses are all in a row. The streets have names now. Thousands of people are living here, and this is looking like Boston or New York or something. So it's very amazing, the amount of structure and the amount of work that went into building the city in such a short amount of time. Here in 1853, 1 year later, we have the construction of City Hall. So now, not only are there lots of houses, lots of kind of businesses, we're starting to see actual government structure here, because in 1846, 1847, California was part of Mexico, and it was called Yerba Buena. And now by 1853, it's a full-fledged state, and here we go. We got an official government building. We got City Hall, and it looks pretty sophisticated. Here's a shot, an aerial view of San Francisco, and it almost, looks similar to what it looks like today. You can see all the docks sticking out, and just the rows of streets, and it's very, very organized. And you can see how far back it's starting to stretch. Before, it was just a few cluster of houses right on the bay. Now, you're stretching up maybe a couple miles, and that are all the way in the back, and you can start to see even further back, you're starting to see, some more houses, some more structure coming up. And another big and important building that was built in 1854 was the actual mint, where they were making money. So now they were taking all this gold, they were melting it down and printing American currency in coin. So that was also a very important piece to make the whole society run smoothly. And we have 1855, 10 years later. And you can see the picture on the left compared to the picture on the right. I know the one on the right, the today picture, is much more colorful, but you can see just how radical this transformation was, and also uh, how similar it looks from back then and now today. There's tons of houses kind of squished together, right? We have tons of houses kind of squished together. So it's kind of cool to see just how fast and far it came, but then also how today we still kind of have um, some of these same things. And the bottom picture shows a picture of Filbert and Washington Square. Today there's that beautiful church there, but back then it was, kind of the street and tons of houses type of thing. So still very, very cool. Here's another picture of San Francisco in 1855, but I wanted to show you a few different parts of this picture that kind of stood out. The first one, if you notice, that kind of stands out is you see these ships that are kind of standing next to buildings, and they didn't do that for aesthetic appreciation. They didn't do that because they thought it would look cool to have buildings that look like ships. These were actual ships that were dragged from the port that were abandoned because the captain would come here, drop off passengers, and all the crew were like, "See ya, we're gonna go find some gold and become millionaires and head to the hills." And so people were like, "Hey, there's some great wood sitting in that bay. No one's there. Might as well just drag that ship onto shore and we'll just turn it into, I don't know, a store or a hotel or a saloon." So you can see these kind of ships that were turned into buildings, which is kind of weird but cool at the same time. Another thing you notice here is there's a lot of men. There were lots and lots of young men who were in San Francisco during this time, and the ratio was about 9 to 1, so 9 men for every 1 woman. And if you notice in this picture, they're pretty much all guys. So that was another kind of prominent feature of the city at this time. You notice to the right here, we have this gentleman wearing this Mexican-style poncho, and I pointed this out because there were a lot of Mexicans who came up, not only from Mexico, Central America, and also from Southern California and the Pueblos, but also the Mexicans who were living here before the European and Americans came. I mean, remember, a person could have been born in Yerba Buena and they would be Mexican citizens, and they grew up and they're 25 years old, and then it just gets switched to San Francisco all of a sudden. It's part of America, and you don't leave, you just live there. And so you're part of this community filled with other Americans who came. And then the last thing I wanted to show you were these guys on the left, and you can kind of tell by their hats and by what they're using that stick with the 2 ways to carry those pots. Those are the Chinese, and the Chinese were another very, very prominent foreign immigrant who came to this area searching for a better life, gold or otherwise. And we'll talk more about how the Chinese influenced San Francisco. Speaking on Chinese influence, just taking a look at these pictures, if you look at the bottom right, you probably have been to that landmark in San Francisco. And the Chinese people and Chinatown in general is all thanks to the gold rush and all these people coming over here trying to make it during this time period. So if this didn't happen, Chinatown wouldn't probably be there. And the gold rush, it brought a lot of people here, and it brought a lot of Chinese. China during this time, the people were very poor. A lot of people were very poor there, and they just would do anything to try to, they heard about these stories about, Gold Mountain and how there's all this gold everywhere, and they just said, hey, let me jump on a ship and head out there and just, it's better than what I got here. And so they try to just make it work. And ultimately they ended up mining, but they were also forced to do other jobs other than mining to survive. And we'll talk about that in later lectures. But ultimately, the Chinese helped influence Chinatown, And San Francisco itself became this kind of gateway or the stopping point for lots of different um, Asian communities, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, etc., in later years. So they really did have a big influence on the development of San Francisco and in California and America in general. So that ends our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and please bring in your notes to class. Have a great day.